Okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Welcome to the 27th of hopefully many episodes of Bardadvice. My name is Charles Chaz Yazik, the DM, the Bard. However you may know me, this is a podcast where I attempt to answer your questions. Advice questions about D&D, TTRPGs, or life in general. And so that's what we're going to do. Thank you for joining us, everyone. Hello, everyone. Avram, Daryl, Bean, Cat Jazz, all the old friends. Thank you for joining again. I don't have a list of names, but that's okay because I have a pretty extensive notes list this week, so I think that we'll be okay. Before we get into anything, I'd like to take the top of the show to remind everyone of the email address, which of course is bardadvice@gmail.com. It also looks like bardadvice, if that helps you remember. Please send any of your questions, complaints, queries, concerns to bardadvice@gmail.com, and I'll do my best to answer them on the show. If you want to get some merchandise, i.e. shorts, or a cool phone case, or a mug, you can do so at manshorts.com. And if you want to contribute to anything that I'm doing musically, you can do so directly via PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo, all of which are Yazik, Y-A-H-Z-I-C-K. A big thank you, as always, to our patrons, our members, those who participate in Super Chats. Excuse me. And also just another reminder to please like, comment, rate the video, subscribe to the channel, give it 5 stars on your platform of choice. Apple, Google, wherever your ears are taking this in. It's appreciated. Also, please share the video if you can. Tell your friends about the podcast. And I think that's everything. I think that's all of the beginning stuff. A couple of other housekeeping things before we get into the bulk of the pod. We had the NBA draft this week. Last night, in fact. Victor Wembanyama went number 1 to San Antonio. So that'll be really interesting to see if he's another David Robinson / Tim Duncan. Also, my wife and I, for the first time, watched the Joan is Awful episode of Black Mirror the night before last, I believe. It was really good. I love Annie Murphy, so I would really recommend it. And, of course, Selma Hayek is great. I think that it's an interesting social commentary on where we're going when it comes to the production and development of AI art / AI productions. So, and then, of course, what all of that means about privacy and stuff. Oh, thank you. I like my tie-dye as well. Hello, River and Flint. River, I'm glad you're here tonight. We've got the infamous question for you. Black Mirror's too depressing. Yeah, I hear that. It definitely hits too close to home a lot of times. It's a little too real sometimes, but nonetheless, I think it was still good. And I think that's everything that we have for the housekeeping stuff. So now I think that we can dive straight into Art Corner, which for Art Corner this week, it's not so much an artist or a piece of art, so much as it's just a friendly reminder, and you may have already seen this with a short that I made earlier today. Tomorrow, June 24th, Saturday, June 24th, is Free RPG Day. So if anybody didn't know, you can go to freerpgday.com and look up your local area to see if there are any local game stores, FLGSs, that are participating. If you're in Jacksonville, Florida, Darby's Dungeon out at the beach is indeed participating. They will be open from 12 to 12, doing all kinds of really cool deals, and of course including the free RPG. So from what I understand, this is a tradition that has been going for several years. It was inspired by the free comic book day. So essentially the idea is to just bring more people into the fold or into the community, I suppose. So a lot of these publishers put together these you know, not necessarily that they're one shots, but they're just kind of these like miniaturized versions almost, I would imagine, of their RPG games, and then they just give them out to people as an inspiration to get them interested into the TTRPG community. And of course, it's an excuse to, you know, go down and support your friendly local gaming store, because, you know, I know Darby's is going to be having a lot of deals on stuff tomorrow. I think she's 10% off in the store and 15% off on TTRPG related things specifically. So if you or a friend wants a free RPG, go to freerpgday.com and check your local listings to see if you've got a store near you that is participating. All right. So I think that's all we've got for Art Corner and for the beginning. So let's get into some questions. We've got 6 this week, and then we'll have some time for chat. One of our questions, which will be on the second end, is probably going to take some time. But that's all good, because that's what we're here for. So let's dive in, shall we? The first question this week is from Charles. And Charles asks, my wife and I recently bought our first house, congratulations, and I'm turning one of the rooms into a gaming room. Cool. Do you or chat have any recommendations on what I should put in there for hosting D&D sessions? Thank you for the question, Charles. Congratulations on the new home. My wife and I are actually in the process of looking for our own forever home, so it's nice to hear that it is indeed possible for some people, and it's happening for some people, so congratulations. I put down, and I'm sure that chat will contribute some things. I put down lighting. Lighting, I feel like, is always a bigger deal than people realize until you're in there and you're doing it. And listen, not that I'm good at lighting. I have no idea how any of that stuff works, but I just mean that like a general consideration for this venture might be cool lighting. However, whatever that means for you. Comfy furniture, make sure that you've got like good wired power and internet. Again, these are all like little things that maybe you might not necessarily think of. If you're thinking about like decorative stuff, there's some of those things that I think are really important. I also put like a designated area for a snack station would be pretty cool. And also your wife or partner would probably be pretty appreciative of if that was just kind of like a designated area where it was like, all right, this is where there's like chips and stuff. Mini fridge stocked with drinks. Yes, mini fridge is on my list as well. That's like a big one. A mic to record shenanigans. Yes. Space for those kind of things if you ever do want to record it for any reason, if you ever want to film or set up microphones. Keeping all that in mind when you're setting it up is very helpful for the future so that you can at least have designated space and area. If you can afford it, a table that's large enough to have cubbies for your players to store stuff in. Yeah, most definitely. I also feel like just on the whole, like a D&D, a good solid gaming table is one of those things where it's like, if it's something that you're going to be using like multiple times a week, I think it's a really good investment to put a little money into a nice gaming table to that end where you've got like little designated storage areas. And that way, if you have that, it's less of a worry that you have to have for your things you have to do yourself if they're just like included in the table, you know? One thing you need is coffee. Friends and I had the best sessions with coffee. Oh yeah. Coffee's a nice thing. You get some Mini Worlds Tavern coffee. A spot for a fan or an AC. That's a good call. D&D gaming table with a monitor screen. Yeah, the monitor screen. If you can afford to do that, that's the move. Yeah, because then you could it's interchangeable. I mean, I guess every table is interchangeable with maps and stuff, but you know what I mean. If you have a screen, there's a lot more flexibility there, I guess. So, yeah, those are the things that I think that you should have for a gaming room. But how cool that you get to have your own gaming room. And maybe like a sign, like name the room. Oh, you know what else I put on here? This is stuff, I guess, that's more like related to the game itself. But like a wall of champions or a list of like character deaths or quotes from the party. I remember a couple of weeks ago we had somebody send in a bunch of hilarious quotes that had happened to them over the years in their campaign sessions. Like something like that could be fun. And you could accomplish all of those things that I just said if you had some sort of either dry erase or chalkboard, or if you own the house, they make paint that you can write on with chalk and stuff. So you could just very well paint a whole wall in a material that allows for you to either... I know that they have one that allows for you to write on it like chalk, but I wonder if they would allow... if there's one that allows for you to write on it like a marker, like a erasable marker. Because that would be the jam if you could just have a wall that was like that. Restroom close enough that people don't have to traipse all over the house to reach it. Yeah, that's true too. Although sometimes that can't be helped, you know? I mean, you didn't, I'm sure, design the house. Maybe you did. But most people just buy the house that, you know, is available for them. And so that doesn't necessarily mean that the great gaming room will have a restroom near it, but something to consider. All in all, good on you for getting the house. Wish you best moving into it. And I hope that it works out for you. I hope that your gaming room is as cool as possible. Oh, and there is dry erase paint. Hell yeah. Yeah, that's what you need. That'd be pretty cool. Well, thank you for the question, Charles. Hopefully that gives you a bit of an answer. And we are, I think, moving straight forward right along. Because I think that one's done. So we're going to move on to this next question, which is from Lilith. And Lilith asks, what kind of class would you like to introduce to D&D that is unique and different from everything else? It could be from a video game or genre like Final Fantasy's Blue Mages, or even classes like the Titan from Destiny 2. I understand that standard classes have a lot of variety, but is there any new class you think that can be brought to D&D? Thanks for the question. So, yes, they have a lot more variety now for sure, but that's, I think, because the nature of 5e is such that any of that stuff that back in 3.5 was prestige class or even multi-class has kind of been all lumped into base. So, as a result, in 3.5, if you wanted to be more than a base fighter, you would go and find a multi-class in the book. In 5e, it's you kind of choose which type of fighter you want to be. So it's kind of built into the class. So in that regard, yes, I think that there's certainly a lot more variety to the base classes, at least right out of the gate in 5e. But that said, the notes that I put down, and this is just totally the kind of person I am about it, I guess, but I said something that combines all of them. So I always had kind of an idea for I never actually wrote it out because it was just something that I always thought of, but some sort of an idea for a class that it gets a little bit of everything from everywhere. And so the power of the class lies in its versatility. So the class can do a little bit of everything. And I guess that you could kind of argue that that's what the bard is already. Although I think the bard is a lot more focused on like spell casting and support just as a general rule. Whereas this would be more of a utility class that would just be kind of like, I don't know, I guess the best of all of the worlds that are available. One of the other things that I put down, and something that I actually have attempted to develop before, and think we wrote out stat blocks, like a class block for was classes that specialize in, or rather, whose abilities are limited to certain weapons. So one of the guys that we had, one of the classes, or the class that I'm referring to that we made, I forget what it was called, but essentially it required the background of a farmer because all of the abilities surrounded weapons that are also farm tools. So if you were this class and you had the background of farmer, you got crazy bonuses and to using stuff like sickles or scythe, like a grain scythe, because you would have background using them as tools. And so as a result, you could do these cool things with these weapons that no one else could. It was class based. And even that class base was kind of based on background. So like you couldn't just be the class. You had to have a background in being a farmer from that particular region of that particular world. That's where this class comes from. So I like that kind of stuff too. Just like as specific as possible, whether that's with weapons or with, feats or skills or spells, things that, exclusive things, I guess. Things that you could only do if you were this thing. Because I feel like there's not a whole lot of that. And the stuff that is like that is annoying. Jack of all trades. Yeah, the bard is the jack of all trades. In 3.5, you stopped collecting levels in your base class when you take a prestige class. Never understood it. I was just thinking that you stopped taking levels in your base class when you're multi-class. Yes, you do. In 3.5, you begin taking levels in the new thing. But theoretically, the new thing is better than your existing thing. And depending on what your base class is, like if you're a fighter, I think that depending on what class you multi or prestige into, if it has perfect bab, then you just retain perfect bab. So, although it can change drastically, but I think that a lot of times in 3.5 it didn't happen a lot in 3.5. Only because a lot of those multi-classes and prestige classes that I mentioned in 3.5 had a number of prereqs. And so the likelihood of you meeting the prereqs for a thing and it not lining up for your character in a beneficial way was probably rare. I mean, it could happen. But for the most part, it's like if you were a fighter and you were prestiging as like a samurai, it really you just moved on to the next chart, I guess. It just shifted. One of the classes partner and I are running for Pathfinder 1 has the ability to grow their equipment from plants and augment them by grafting in other plants to them, like a druid mad scientist combo. That is really dope. That's like a druid artificer. Kind of. Whereas like an artificer works with the technological aspect of crafting. You'd be druid crafting. That's really dope. I like that. So I think any of those. Let's see. There's some other recommendations in here. A class designed for changelings that uses the abilities of those they copied, but to a less limited extent would be cool. You get to do a lot like Jack of all trades, but only one class copied at a time. That I really like. Yeah, that could accomplish my idea of the versatility. So it's, you can take on X number of. So maybe the higher level you get in the class, the more characteristics you could take on. So maybe at like level 5, you get the ability to take on, the class feature of one other class than the one that you start with. Well, I guess that this is your own class, so you could take features from one other class, and then by level 8 or level 10 you can do another one. And so by 20 you can take like features from like up to 4 or 5 classes. That'd be pretty sweet. I think that would accomplish what I was trying to earlier. Love to play a landlocked sailor, some poor guy washed overboard and no way to get back to his ship. Oh, that's sad. But all of his skills would be like being a pirate and sailing and stuff, so he'd probably be pretty useless on land. But that's a good setup for a story. You'd have to know ahead of time what you wanted to prestige into and then build your character with a prereqs in mind for the start of the game. True, but not always. Like, yeah, sometimes it naturally led in, but yeah, there's been a number of times where I've been like, oh, damn it, like I really have to, if I plan on doing this later, then I've got to build that into my base now. So that's a bit annoying. But yeah, thanks for the question, Lilith. That was a cool one. Interesting to think of. The power. The idea of being able to create a new class for D&D. All right. Let's keep cranking. Oh, no. I did not mean to open Adobe Audition. My bad. All right. The next question is from Chris. As we expect. And Chris asks, what's your favorite D&D item you own? That's a really big question. Because I have a bunch of stuff for D&D. I don't know that I have a favorite specific item. But I have a couple of things that I brought over that I can show closer to the camera. I have this, I think I've showed this before. This Strongheart Good Paladin AD&D figure. You can kind of see him, I guess. But I get a lot of this stuff. Sometimes I get stuff from fans, and then I also get things as gifts from my thoughtful sister-in-law, sister-in-laws, brother-in-law. My wife is one of 4, so when it comes to like birthdays and Christmases and stuff, they're all very thoughtful and cool stuff. And then I also get stuff from fans. This is one I recently got from my sister-in-law. Is a trivia question cards game, AD&D. I haven't actually even I haven't even unwrapped this yet. But that's pretty neato. I would say the coolest thing that I have at the moment that I've been looking at is this. This was another gift that I got for my birthday. It is the Deities and Demigods Cyclopedia. This is an AD&D. TSR published this in like 1980. And it's got the Lake Geneva P.O. box on it, so that's kind of cool. But that's been interesting to look through. Just some of the old art is really cool. And it has like, I guess this is just like through all the different mythos, through the Egyptian lore and Chinese lore and all of it. And then I have a number of other things. Dice. I have so many dice, so many different sets of dice, and then also so many oversized dice. I really like one that I've got back there right now, which is we have the D20, Kraken D20, the Leviathan, which is just the silver one with the purple lettering, or purple numbering, I guess. But the other one that we have that I really like is the one that is the Man Shorts yellow and purple. And that might be my favorite single like dice item, because it's super dope. It's like it's our colors exactly. And speaking of dice and Kraken, need to make sure that we've got that ball rolling. I'm pretty sure we have on the next sets of dice. That's coming. Let's see what other people are saying. Steampunk themed metal dice. The still open Gary Gygax Memorial Edition reprint of AD&D, PHP, DMG, and Monster Manual. Damn. River said, I have a homemade mini of a Mind Flayer Arcanist and 2 Displacer Beast Pack Lords that were made and gifted to me by a now deceased friend. Oh, sorry to hear that. But that's a really cool gift to have them to remember them by. Favorite D&D, does it have Cthulhu? That's a good question. Probably. I'd say that'd be a safe bet that book has Cthulhu in it. Original edition of Deities and Demigods was a fun history. Stolen and sold 3 times, but it was always found its way back to me. Cool. Yeah. That's a cool book. And also just like, it's neat to see that it's books like that I think are cool because it's kind of a time capsule. It's a moment in time. Even if it's stuff about like fantasy, still, when you see kind of the stuff that it alludes to or references and some of the verbiage, and I think it's interesting how we as humans change and evolve over time when it comes to like language and presentation, and this is pretty neato. My original edition of... Oh, I already just read that. I don't know why I thought that was a different message. Okay, so, yeah, those are some of my favorite, Chris. those things. I also have like little things like the back there behind me is the little dunce cap for the die and the little timeout. It's like a timeout chair for the die and then like a throne for the good die. When it performs well, I guess, when it rolls d20s, it gets rewarded and praised, and then otherwise it gets embarrassed and cast out. Although I've never really used any kind of like dice jail stuff. It's just, I usually just throw the dice away if they perform well. No, I don't throw them away. What the hell am I saying? They just get put in a drawer and not used until I forget about them and then use them again. And then they roll poorly. And then I remember why they were in the drawer in the first place. Thank you for the question, Chris. Let's keep cranking. Moving right along. We're getting there, River. Not this one, but the next one. So this next question is from Sam. And Sam asks, are you getting the new D&D Heroes Feast cookbook when it drops later this year? Also, you mentioned on a recent episode that you've considered making supplement content or a Mann Shorts book. What does that look like? Thank you for the question, Sam. I don't have any immediate plans to get the cookbook myself, although if anyone else is interested, I did put together some imagery for it. It looks like going to be coming out in the fall in either August. It looks like it'll be available for purchase either in August and September. I think it actually is probably already available for pre-order. But it will be just an expansion or a brother-sister book to the original one, I imagine, that they released, the original Heroes Feast cookbook. So if anybody's interested in that, that'll be available. I don't know if I'm going to get it. I doubt that I'm going to get it, but it seems cool enough. To your point about Mann Short supplement stuff, yes. So I'm currently in the process. I haven't fully dived into what will be required for producing it, but I have begun the process of developing something that I think I've decided to call the Florida Manthology, which will be a supplement that can be used for 5e. Maybe it'll just be for 5e. It might be for other things as well. Might be written in such a way that it could be applied to any system. But all of that's to say, it'll have some really cool stuff. I have been playing with AI art this week when it comes to that kind of stuff. So you asked what it would look like. These are some of the images that I've been developing in my working around with Midjourney and messing around for different types of monsters / creatures that would be available in this Florida Manthology. This is all theoretical, obviously, but it is something I would like to develop. In addition to new monsters, I would want to include new magic items, new spells, new feats, some adventures. And I would also want to try and work in as much as I could from the Mann Shorts editions. So it would be sort of a hybrid of the Florida theme when it comes to adventures and stuff, but also it would be kind of Mann Shorts themed as well in that, you know, like for example, I would stat block like a Karen monster, or like a different monsters that we've seen and encountered on the show. And I would also very likely build out stats for either the abilities / skills, as well as any kind of items or equipment that they may have used throughout the episodes as well. So make Sarah, Waylon, Lance into character classes. I don't know that they will exist as character classes so much as they will exist as PCs, playable PCs. But yes, they might exist as a class. Or at a minimum, maybe, I was thinking maybe deities, where like they could offer you bonuses. So depending on which one of them you had as a deity, they would give you different bonuses. Like Sarah's class would be very OP. Yes, indeed. I feel like Sarah's class would have the ability where you could like change a roll to 20 once a day. Like that would be the Sarah blessing. The greater crocodile monster looks like a creature from the ElfQuest RPG. Oh, cool. Need to put in Barry as a BBEG. Yeah, I thought about that too. If we do this as a Kickstarter, we'll probably have all of the main characters of the episode available, whether that's in PC form or as classes, and then stretch goals will have, we can add in Justin and Kepler and Barry and any other characters that have kind of come through the show over the years. Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. We will continue to make content. Someone must have cast Sleep on Waylon. Yeah, I don't know what his deal is. He's cursed. The yawn thing is like, I'm doing his best of this week, and I'm telling y'all, I don't know for sure, but I feel like the gag reel portion of the best of Waylon might just be all yawns. And it's only because I've approached this edit. I'm about halfway, maybe a little halfway more through the cut, and I've made it I've made a consolidated effort on this cut to include every yawn that I can. So I want to try and get every one. And yikes, there's so many. And some of them are long. Like some of the older ones that I'd forgotten where it's like, oh my God, this yawn takes like 17 seconds to resolve. Thank you very much, Nick, for the super chat there. It's very much appreciated. Those things go directly to us. Anything that you can do always helps. It's much appreciated. But yeah, there's so many yawns. There's so many that it might just be the whole gag reel. I hope not. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, because I'd like there to be some other funny stuff in there as well, All right. So, yeah, I'm gonna make that thing. I'm gonna figure out how to make that thing, and then we're gonna have the Florida Manthology for everybody to use, and that'll be really fun. I'll keep people abreast of that, what's going on, let you know if and when we do have the Kickstarter and stuff for that. We'll let you know. So thank you for the question, Sam. Moving on to what some of us will find to be the highlight of the evening. Certainly something I've been looking forward to since last week. This next question is from River, and it's been a long time coming. So let's talk about it. River asks, what are your thoughts on running a false Hydra? Specifically, how would you leave breadcrumbs for your party members leading up to the encounter with it? Thank you for the question, River. I think that you asked this question before we even started the podcast, or very shortly after we started the podcast. And I told you that I would answer it. It's a thing that I kept putting off until last week. I was finally ready to answer it, and you weren't here. No worries. It's totally understandable. But you're back this week. I'm glad that I didn't answer it last week, so we can talk about it this week. So, false Hydra. So first of all, let's talk about what it is for anybody that doesn't know. So the false Hydra, essentially, it's a Hydra that sings a song that causes you to forget that it exists. Now, I don't know. There are a lot of questions that I still have about how this thing works mechanically, but I think that I have a strong enough idea of how it works, at least to grasp how I would, at least to know how I would approach it. So basically, you have this, the setup that I've read online is that you have a town where there are people who may not be able to understand, they maybe not understand why they're unmarried and yet there are women's clothes in the house. Women may be confused about toys they have around the house despite having no children. Children may be convinced that they're orphans despite living in a well-looked-after home. So essentially, your players would come across this town, and it would become evident to them that like stuff was going on in the town, like people were going missing, but yet people weren't reacting in a way that you would think. So like, let's say you go to a bed and breakfast, and it's like, Tim and Edna's bed and breakfast, and you go in and it's Edna, and you never see Tim, and you ask about Tim, and she doesn't know who Tim is, but it says Tim and Edna's bed and breakfast on the sign. So how does she not know who Tim is? And that's because the false Hydra ate Tim, and the song of the Hydra has caused her to forget that the Hydra exists, and ergo anyone else that's been eaten by it. So it's a siren with many heads. The false Hydra is a monster that tells you to gaslight your players. Essentially, yes. So anyone who eats it, anyone who would eat ceases to exist from anyone else's memory. I don't know if the stream crashed or not. None of my stuff over here crashed. That was very, very strange. Yeah, maybe it was a false Hydra. Jesus. Okay, it looks like things are normal again. I don't know what that was about. Sorry, gang. We've had some weird weather lately, so I don't know. Maybe the false Hydra's coming for me. That said, River, my answer is this. I like the idea of installing the false Hydra directly into the party. So I feel like the natural instinct is this false Hydra is this monster that exists somewhere out there somewhere, and he's doing this stuff. I like the idea much better that someone in the party has these same type of abilities. So you would almost have to rebuild the stat block as a DM NPC, as more of a DMPC than a monster, although it would have those same capabilities. So this is what I wrote down. So you have like an evil bard. This NPC hints at other people. You really have to have a lot of. You have to have the honor system with meta. So this would probably be for advanced players, I'd say. But you can hint at other people, referring to them. There can be hints of other people referring to them or having rations or potions missing, having to pay extra at the inn. So this is almost like a person that's with them, and they don't know that this person's with them. But everybody else can see that they're with them. I don't know. Again, this is again like it's a question about the mechanics of how the monster works, but essentially the idea in my mind, the idea is that there is this thing or this being or this entity that creates these atrocities, and no one really can pin them down because anybody that experiences or witnesses said atrocities forgets about them. So if you could figure out a way to work that into a character that was along with them in the party, so much so that they maybe even didn't know. So I wrote, I really like the idea of a party of 6, trying to figure out why people keep referring to them as a party of 7. You could open the story with a bard setting up on stage and have everyone give wisdom saves to see if they remember the performance. So it's something that you could install as a seed very early on in the game. It does make it a little more complicated when you do it that way, but that's the way that I would do it. I like a lot of the suggestions that I've seen in the reading of things about the false Hydra. So the stuff that I mentioned earlier about like people missing stuff, and it's really just a sad set of stage when you think about it, coming into a town where like there's clearly something going on, but nobody really remembers. You could leave clues with the party of characters that never existed as companions of the party. You have a heavily armored horse, but no one in the party rides a horse. Yeah, exactly. Yes. So like when they get up at the hotel and they go to pay their bill, they're paying for 7 people, but they know there's only 6 people in the party. So stuff like that. Krampus is a party member. We were supposed to figure out that the Hydra ate our party member, but it was my first time, so I didn't get it. Yeah. It is kind of complicated even for someone. I've been playing this for so long, and when I first got the question and was reading about it, there was a lot of cognitive dissonance I had to like force myself through to understand. How about every time it consumes someone, it adds them a head that no one remembers? The party receives a wake-up bardic inspiration dice, and sometimes when they kill monsters, potions drop out of the wounds. Occasionally, the party will be referred to as one size larger. Wow. Could you make the false Hydra a human-type character? When he eats the other people, he feeds them to the party. Wow. For me, it's how the party will save a town or a city from a fearsome horror that no one will remember. Yeah, that's true, too. That's one of the reasons I like it being more directly in the party itself. So, and yeah, you could also do it in such a way where this is a DMPC that they think is just a DMPC, but it's really, maybe even the DMPC has like an alter ego, and that's like the actual false Hydra. So like once he puts on this cloak or whatever, he ceases to be who he is and becomes a different thing. That he then sings a song and everybody forgets that thing exists, and so then it's just this guy that's the false cook. Yeah, truly. Like just this DMPC that is just like, oh, this is totally innocuous. But then like he's killing people, but then maybe the thing is not that it's a song, maybe it's just that it's a particular spell or a like a ritual or something, right? Where he just kind of, oh, that didn't happen. And so then they're just walking around with this murderer who's just, essentially, he's killing them off one by one. Definitely not an encounter to run with new players, yes. As once the encounter gets going, you have to allow your party to give it a little meta with their actions to keep it moving. Definitely. So that's what I would do. I tend to take an idea and then not necessarily put it on its head, but just like say, how would we approach it differently? I think it's a brilliant idea as a monster. I think it's really spooky and cool. The idea of coming into a town and people don't know what's going on and people are going missing, and then you, the party, finding out that there's this monster, and then also coming up with ways to avoid, right, hearing the song, because theoretically, if you hear the song, you would have no incentive to go after the monster because you wouldn't know that it existed. So stuff like figuring out ways for the party to either covering up their ears manually or perhaps even casting deafen on themselves or throwing a thunderstone on the ground or something when they know it's singing to avoid hearing the song. But I also like the idea of changing it a bit and making it a little bit of a different thing. So instead of just like this elusive legendary monster, it's more about the concept of what that means about forgetting the atrocities that this thing has caused, or rather bestowed upon this town of people, and just make it about the party. I think that's really cool. Throw someone with modify memory into the mix and watch players' brains melt. No doubt. I mean, and if you did something like that, you could really do like a whole campaign where you've got a false Hydra DMPC in the party as half of the BBEG, and then another evil bard DMPC type person who is elsewhere, who is using modify memory, and then putting those two together at the end for a BBEG. That'd be really cool. One of my players will have their hand subconsciously carve a warning into their skin while they slept, and eventually they'll find a journal that belongs for the 8th party member. And belongings for the 8th party member. Yeah. Yeah, that's so cool. I really like that idea too. I love the idea of people like waking up in camp and there being stuff there that's not theirs, because that doesn't happen often. In particular, if it was stuff that was like clearly cared for and clearly used, like they wake up and there's just like a battle axe that's just there. And maybe the barbarian even takes it, It's like you don't even necessarily have to address that there's a person there, because depending on how long this spell or ability lasts, because that's the thing, right? I think that it varies. It's going to depend on how you want to do it in the stat block. Some places I saw for the False Hydra, the song lasts for years, or it lasts until it's dead and then it wears off. But obviously you can do it however you want to, whatever makes the most sense for your party. I personally think that this is the coolest way to do it, but there are many number of ways to do it. And it is a really cool concept, I think, that allows itself for those different approaches. So every DM is going to approach it differently. They start at next session in August. Oh, cool. Hell yeah. Yeah, that I think it is such a cool idea. And by the way, it would scare the hell out of me if I was playing a game and that happened. Like, it freaked me out when I read about it the first time, because I'd heard of it conceptually, but I'd never really read into it until you had sent the question. And since I've read it, I've just been thinking like, man, that is some scary stuff. And if it happened right up in the middle of your own party, so cool. I think that's how you got to do it. So we did it. I hope that was an answer. That was really fun, and it's inspired me to get into those kind of questions with more gusto instead of just being kind of intimidated by it. False Hydra mixed with Mind Flayer, hell yeah. Longtime fan, just wanted to say thank you for your tribute to two legends of comedy on the wall behind you. George and Ronnie are legends. Oh yes, most definitely, dude. George Carlin in particular, man, is one of my heroes. For sure. I think, and in my opinion, I think the best comic to ever do it. And then Rodney's, he's just fun. Yes, you're welcome, River. Thank you for the question. It was really fun. And hopefully that inspires other people. Hopefully it gives some education to people on how it works, and inspires people to make their own False Hydra in their own campaigns. Although, just another reminder, as River mentioned, and I think it is important, it is more of an advanced thing because, I think it's a little advanced of an idea in general, but definitely not something you would want to throw first-time players at. You wouldn't want to throw out first-time players. That would be insane. The Warlock made a pact and becomes the False Hydra. Hell yeah, I love that idea. What if the monster doesn't hide, uses strong hypnosis to look like someone who feels familiar to the whole party, make them think that they've been with them the whole time, but they actually just joined? True. That works too. What do you mean Tupac had his moments? Tupac was a moment. Tupac was a movement. And Einstein's back there, and I got a Dolly poster back there. We've got good representation, I think, throughout the communities of the art and science spectrum is covered back there. But I'm glad that we went over the False Hydra. False Hydra is Barry. Yeah, Barry's just a real False Hydra, like in real life. Oh, yeah, and there's the Van Gogh back there as well, the small one. All right. Well, thank you, River. Glad that we were able to answer that question. Before we do some just general chat, we've got one more. This last question is from John. And John asks, my DM allows for live instruments at the table within reason, still brave. What are some fun and interesting ways to incorporate music and songs into the campaign or session? Keep up the podcast. Looking forward to the new content. Thank you, John. He sounds like a cool DM to me. Jeez, let's instruments at the table. I did note that you said within reason, so I imagine you wouldn't be able to just like show up with like a marching bass drum. But who knows? Probably just like bass, guitar, right? Mandolin, violin. Although it is a pretty brave thing to say, only because I'm the type that'll really abuse that kind of stuff. So like, I'm the kind of guy that like, if you tell me I can bring a musical instrument, I'm going to like rent a tuba. Because I played tuba in high school. So I still know my way around a bass clef. So That's the kind of thing that I would do. But in terms of how to incorporate it, you can use the music as theme music, battle music. It's good for mood just in general. So if we're talking about music in the sense of pre-produced music, whether that's like my music or someone else's music that is for the purpose of the game, so you're doing it as to kind of set the mood, or if you're in a tense situation, like a tense battle scenario, a combat, sometimes it's cool to have like music going in the background. There's also the incorporation of music and songs into the game itself from a more of an analog perspective, I guess, in such that the players themselves would either be singing or creating some sort of music together. For that, I just put a note of music just always being a fun way to pass the time just in general. I've found that stuff that we have done as friends or as a party in D&D when it comes to music is stuff like sea shanties. So there was a pirate campaign. We've done several pirate campaigns throughout the years, but I know that in more than one of them, we would create our own little sea shanties that we would sing like during travel time and stuff. That's always fun because it's kind of like a group activity where everybody can kind of join in. If you're in a place where you're doing traveling and you have downtime, singing stuff in rounds is always fun. It's just stuff that's easy, that is, I mean, there's a reason that our ancestors did that stuff back in the day, like the Greeks on ships singing songs, pirates sailing around the globe, Vikings and stuff, and everybody's singing songs. So you always watch the fairy tale soundtrack to follow me around as my background music in real life. Give the whole party kazoos. Oh, God. Well, actually, that's not a terrible idea. I feel like kazoos are great because they let the user feel annoying, but they're not too terribly annoying. I say that, but it's a thing that somebody could probably immediately drive me crazy with, and one that I'm likely I could drive someone else crazy with. Someone who always has a guitar in our sessions because Mustang Peppercorn loves playing Johnny B. Good, and I can't play guitar, which is ironic that I have 5 of them and can't play. Well, you should learn. Doesn't take much, you just gotta spend some time. Chromatic scale musical puzzle to unlock the hidden staircase. Ooh, that's fun. Don't even bring an instrument, but claim you played one through the whole session. Be the false bard. Oh, there you go. See, Flint's asking the real questions. Now we're combining concepts. So last question and this question have combined. And so now you're just gaslighting the party. You're being like the false Hydra bard who's just like, yeah, what do you mean? I'm playing the violin right now. What do you mean you don't see it? Man, I feel like the false Hydra concept can be worked into so many different things. Soundtrack from Disney's Robin Hood. Oh, yeah. Like, that's the hamster dance, right? Haven't we talked about that before on this podcast? About how the opening song in Disney's Robin Hood is the original hamster dance. The hamster dance is just the hamster dance is just a sped up version of the song from Robin Hood. Beep doo bow 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 bow. Beep bop boo doo do. Beep doo 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 bow doo 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 doo. It's the hamster dance. Enter Sandman. Oh, yeah. Oh, hey, Justin. What's going on, pal? That is a really meta question. Best soundtrack background music from Muppet Treasure Island. Oh, you know what? I actually bet that is a pretty banging soundtrack. The Muppet movies are good for music. There's always good stuff on there. What you walked into, pal, was me answering a question about music, and I think that answers it. So I hope that gives you something to go on, John. And good on your DM for being a cool DM and letting instruments at the table. I don't know how long that would last if a DM told me I could do that. Probably not long. You just watched Raiders of the Lost Ark for the first time. What, did you just spawn onto Earth? What, are you going to watch Star Wars next? You ever heard of like, what? Hey, yeah, just, yeah, always behind. So now, since we're at the end here, I can't believe we're already at the end. We're just going to do a few minutes of chat. So last week, if you weren't here, if you don't know, chat is like a new segment that we're going to start doing towards the end of the episode. Once we finish the questions, we're just going to chat. We're just going to see what chat's doing. And we chat with chat throughout the episode anyway, but this is the designated time for chat. So it's actually kind of serendipitous that you're here, Justin, because that's Princess Bride is a must. Yeah, that movie's fantastic. I feel like Princess Bride is so self-aware because it's like it is the book that it promises. It's the story rather that it promises, I guess. I know some people who claim they've never seen Star Wars and probably never will. I think they're aliens, maybe. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that with people that are like, oh yeah, never seen it. Jaws, never seen it. And it's like, do you like movies? You know, Melissa's kind of that way. Sarah. She hasn't seen that much stuff. We always joke about how all she's ever seen is Titanic. Oh my God. And speaking of Titanic, these poor people in this submarine, which, you know, it's a tragedy, of course, but I don't know how terrible I'm expected to feel. There was a girl that on TikTok, I think, that said it in a really good way, and I tend to agree with it. It's that she's like, I can't feel worse. I can't be more concerned for you than you. And I kind of have that sentiment. At a minimum, I think that it's a good lesson for all of us. So, hey, anybody out there, if you ever find yourself in a scenario where you're paying the cost of a house to go into a watercraft that doesn't meet regulations, maybe this will make you think about that. But that's just like my opinion, man. It's of course a tragedy. Wouldn't wish that on anyone else. We can only hope that their untimely death was quick and they did not suffer, which seems to be the case, right? That seems to be what happened. So when your engineers say it's a bad idea, listen to them. Yeah, just across the board, it's good to listen to the engineers. Maybe it's because I'm somebody who like is so uninclined mechanically when it comes to like science and math. But I got to tell you, man, you would have to show me that you know what you're doing. And oddly enough, like I trust the engineering of stuff like roller coasters. Usually because they're made with regulations, with the idea in mind that someone could get hurt. So let's try and mitigate that as much as possible, right? Fezzik, are those rocks ahead? First time I watched it was a rabid fan of the movie. When I told her that I thought it was okay, she literally slapped me. Wow, which movie is this? No windows. Maybe they'll reappear. I don't know, I'm trying to smell the movie in response. And for those that have not seen the movie Oscar starring Sylvester Stallone, is that a new movie of his? I feel like he and Arnold are still competing, because a few weeks ago, and I really should finish it. My wife and I only have one more episode. The Arnold documentary. And then I saw that Sylvester Stallone has one up on another platform. And it's like, what, you guys are competing even in like documentaries? What's going on? And then he's also got, we've already talked about this, Justin. He can't run. Believe me. He'd have my vote. But not unless we make some changes. It's an older movie. Yeah. Florida, the land of rats of unusual size. Yeah, really, we're the land of lizards of unusual size. The alligators out there. Yeehaw. And oh, dude, you want a snapshot of Florida? How about this afternoon, or rather this evening, I was out getting some dinner for my wife and I saw this car that had a bumper sticker that said, stop, drop, and roll won't work in hell. It's pretty intense. pretty intense, Florida. I'm just trying to get something to eat. I don't want to have like a whole existential crisis when I'm going to get a hamburger. The Stallone superhero movie. Samaritan. Oh, that's right. Huh. Spiders of unusual size in Australia. Yeah, that's true. Although Australia is a place that I would like to visit, in spite of the spooky. I feel like Australia is like I feel like Australia and Florida are not too far apart. Both in like stuff that they got to deal with geologically, and also like the people are kind of close. I don't know what it is. Something about Australia. Maybe it's just certain Australians, but I'll see stuff and I'll be like, man, that's some Florida stuff, dude. They're just like the Florida of over there. They're the other side Florida. I don't know how you guys survive. Place sounds like living in a Mad Max movie. It is like living in a Mad Max movie. Thank you. That's how I describe it. My wife, I tell my wife every time I come home, I'm like, it's the apocalypse out there. It's Mad Max. It's Fury Road. That's what I just came home from. Just out and about. At least nobody's thrown an alligator through a drive-thru lately. Well, we don't know. Maybe. It could be happening. It's just that it's low on the list of priorities of other stuff that's going on, so we don't hear about it. I will say, I hope that hurricane season is not that bad, because I don't want to have to deal with that if I'm in the middle of, if I'm in the process of buying/moving. Just don't want to deal. Still got we've got lots of problems. We got a lot of problems here. It is fun and not fun at the same time. I've told people that about Florida. It's weird. I have a very love-hate relationship with the state because, like, I grew up here mostly, and I have family here, and it's not all bad. There are things about the state that are great. It's just that I think the nature of a lot of the people here is such that there's very much an attitude of, like, I don't care, I'm doing it. And it kind of goes throughout the state. And so that's like all well and good, I think, for the most part. But when it comes to like legislation, then it gets scary. So it's definitely an endless source of content. I will say that. That is the best thing. But Florida wears it on its sleeve. True, but you know, there is something to be said about the type of people that come here and the type of people that live here, myself included in that. So, like, you think Oregon? Yeah. Well, you know, I'll say that there was a period there where I wanted to leave, and there's a part of me lately that feels like maybe I'm best served as a citizen here when it comes to what I can do to help contribute to local and state government from a voting standpoint. You know, I think that my vote, whatever that might be, is probably better served here than a lot of places in the country in that regard. So I think that I'll ultimately end up staying, but it's getting tough. It's getting tougher to stay here every year. Don't think of it as leaving, think of it as escaping. Yeah, true. Escape the Sunshine State. You have family in Central Florida, and at least half of them are completely normal. Yeah, it's weird. It's a weird thing. Like, I think people the people that live here for sure, too, either love it or hate it. Like, they're either like, man, paradise on earth, or it's like, get me out of here. Most days, it's kind of a combination of the two, I'd say. So, I feel like most of the time, it's bearable. Ugh. I feel like that's the adjective if pressed. What's the adjective for Florida? Bearable. But, you know, depending on who you ask, that's not true, because some people move out. I don't know why we ended up talking about Florida, but hey, I'm going to be using a lot of that cool stuff to build out this supplement, the Florida Manthology. So if you have any ideas for that, by the way, chat, feel free to send them to bardadvice@gmail.com. You can do so. It also looks like bardadvice. But yeah, it's a weird place. And some days it feels like it's getting weirder. But what are you going to do, you know? My state's been trying to rival. Yeah, I know. You and Texas. Them and Texas. But with the people, it's the swamps and the storms. Yeah, the water table's so high, and it's just so wet and marshy and stuff around our area. All right, I don't want to keep talking about this state because I don't want to get arrested or anything. I don't know what the rules are these days about that stuff, but we are wrapping up again, folks. We're already done. I can't believe we got through it. And this was the False Hydra episode. Here we are at the end. So, as a reminder, please send things to bardadvice@gmail.com. It also looks like bardadvice. Send your questions, concerns, complaints, queries, compliments, all of the above to bardadvice@gmail.com. If you want to get some merch, you can get merch at manshorts.com. And if you want to contribute to anything that I'm doing musically, you can do so at PayPal, Cash App, or Venmo, all of which are Yazik, Yahzik. I will return next week. I will be here, same Bard time, same Bard channel, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Man Shorts YouTube channel. The audio of this podcast will be available at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Although I guess if you're listening to this, you already know that. And yeah, that's it, gang. That's all we got this week. So thank you all for joining. I hope that you have a fantastic weekend. Remember, just one last reminder, tomorrow is Free RPG Day, so go to your local FLGS. If you've got a friend that's ever shown any kind of interest in getting involved in D&D, now's the time. Strike while the iron is hot. Get them a free RPG. Take them to your friendly local gaming store. I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you next time.